Um, hey, so everyone, welcome to our March version of the Bridge Forum. And we're kind of doing something similar to what we did last year, where Sunny presented at Roots Tech, I presented at Roots Tech. So we'll be kind of doing some shorter versions of what we did there. And then Carla Laney is here with us. So we'll have Sunny go first, and then Carla, and then I'll be the third. And so each of the presenters will have about 15 minutes. Feel free to, you can ask questions throughout either in the chat or by raising your hand. And then we'll have a few questions in between each presentation and then some
You don't
Q&A
want
at
to
the end.
listen? I don't. It's going to be loud.
But with that, I'll pass it over to
So
Sunny, and
because
I'll go and
he's
do
finding
a
out.
little bit of muting. Yep.
All right. Let me set you up here, flip you over. All right, guys. Well, thanks for having me tonight. As I said, I'm gonna give you the 15-minute version of my talk on finding and using obituaries. I will have to tell you, I'm not used to giving a 15-minute version. So hopefully what I've got here is 15 minutes and I've got my timer on here. So, politely cut me off if you have to. Just by way of introduction, I'm the content director for Your DNA Guide, a Family Tree magazine contributing editor and columnist. I'm a past course coordinator and an instructor for GRIP Genealogy Institute, author of hundreds of articles and a couple of books on finding your family history, soon to be author of a guide on finding the archives of Catholic women religious. So Nuns and Sisters is my next book coming out. So I'm really excited about that. But tonight it's all about obituaries. And I'm guessing that this group already knows almost everything there is to know about obituaries. But even with the short version of what I'm telling you tonight, I hope I give you a finding strategy or something that just really gives you a new idea or a fresh approach for what you're doing. So according to Dennis Brimhall, the average obituary contains the names of about 10 family members. That's a lot, and a lot of obituaries have even more than that. As I'm sure you've seen in lots and lots of obituaries, there can be so many things that identify somebody uniquely that help you make kinship determination. That's what we call that connective tissue between all of our first degree relatives and even further relatives than that. And help us figure out how people are related to each other. We place them in time and space, when and where they were. And then often we find out who around them was already living or dead. And then we learn a lot about their lives and sometimes about their personalities or their character. So lots and lots of information. And sometimes it's only 10 words long and sometimes it's much longer than that. Just depends on the time period and who's writing it and how much time and money they had to put into the placing it. So I do want to give a really brief timeline here to really center you on when you can most hope to find obituaries. Because before about the 1830s, newspapers, and I'm specifically talking about the United States tonight, before about the 1830s, newspapers were really about business or politics, and they were sold mostly by annual subscriptions, so you had to have money to buy them. By the 1830s, everyday people are becoming more literate, and so we come into this era of the penny press. So new technology, papers cheaper to print, people wanting to see their names in print and their relatives' names in print, and the newspaper starts to become more of entertainment and schoolmaster and gossip for the masses. And this is where you really start to see some, not everybody, but many more everyday people mentioned in obituaries. So we move a little bit forward in time, and we've got this big window of time here by about after the Civil War and clear through the onset of the digital age is we have the golden era of newspapers with better literacy. We have immigrant populations who have come in and are looking for things in their own language, in their own niche communities. We have, after the Civil War, we have 90% of our African Americans for whom it is now legal to learn to read and write. And boy, they do. They love their newspapers. And so we have lots of African American presses. So huge demand. Paper gets even cheaper. High-speed presses come along, better inks. Advertising makes it more lucrative. So now we have just about everybody and their brother having an obituary in the paper. At least that's what you hope that you're going to find. All right, but then we hit the internet era. In the past 20 years or so, you probably have noticed that print newspapers have really declined. Most people get their news online, and no surprise, most obituaries, if there is one, most obituaries are now going to run online, often exclusively online. So, which is why my first little mini case study talks about finding recent obituaries for my relatively recent deceased relatives. And I even teach on how to do this for your DNA matches sometimes. But let's stick to the traditional stuff tonight. So Megan Smoleniak posted this a couple years ago. Is it just me, or is it becoming harder and harder to tell when someone's died? And yes, I realize that must sound strange to non-genealogists. And look at that. When I grabbed the screenshot of it, 129 comments already. And really, people were agreeing. A changing newspaper culture, rising costs for placing obituaries. About 10 years ago, obituary placement was costing $300 to $600 just for a simple one. So the trend even 10 years ago was for online memorials, especially through funeral homes. So let me just give you one quick example here. Most recent obituaries can simply be Googled with the name, the location of the death, and the word obituary. So if it's a common name, you might have to think of a less common word that might be associated with that person, such as a relative's name that might appear in it, or the word firefighter, or their birthplace. But in this case, the first research result does match my uncle. So I clicked it through to see it, and I'm sure this is a familiar site for many of us, a modern obituary on the website of a funeral home where I can share a memory or send virtual flowers or read the tribute. But now let's take another look. So that's very straightforward, but I want to just push this a little bit further. So tribute to my grandma who died less than a month ago, about a month ago almost today. So bye, Grandma. When I Google her obituary, I find two search results, but I don't find her listed on a funeral home website per se, but on two different aggregator websites. So what I'm looking at here, over here on tributearchive.com, I've put a square around that. You can see that it's brought to you by Mueller's Funeral Home. So this is the full obituary. The funeral home has contributed the full obituary to this aggregator site. They're participating probably as an affiliate. They have a paid placement probably. They've got an arrangement with the site where they get to place their things without having to do it on their own website and host their own technology and things like that. As you can imagine, for a small funeral home business, that's a lot easier for many of them. So that's what you see here is the full obituary. But the second one here that I'm just showing you a snippet of, this is from Ecovita, which is a Canadian website that aggregates publicly available obituaries. So if you were to read through this second one, though, it's not the complete obituary. It was harvested from Tribute Archive or even maybe another source. So for consent and copyright reasons, it can't publish the entire obituary or the images without the family's consent. So this one just summarizes key facts. So my take home from this particular example is it's often worth looking for multiple online obituaries or memorial pages to see what unique information one might contain over another. If another was actually sponsored through the family with the funeral home. And by the way, it is not Kennewick, Western Australia. It is Kennewick, Washington, where the funeral happens. And I have no idea why it says that. All right, so second mini case study for you here, and I'm looking at my time here. The case of the 6-year-old lodger. I find this guy, little kid, a 6-year-old living as a lodger in the household of Ed and Annie Shelton in 1930. I'm like, what the heck? Who are his parents? I can't tell who they are. I can't confidently identify them nearby. I go to the 1940 census where he was also listed as a lodger in the same family's household. So I look for his obituary online. And I do that by just going to, in this case, where I found him was at the Family Search website in the Genealogy Bank, one of the Genealogy Bank collections. So several years ago, these obituary indexes were created. I think they were some of the very first, if not the very first, large-scale harvesting of obituaries and other vital index material from historical newspapers. And so several of these were created. They've since been updated. As you can tell, they're very fresh. A couple of them are really, really large. Some of them are a little smaller. And since we've seen other similar harvested newspaper indexes end up, like from newspapers.com is now on Ancestry. I'm showing you here that there's different dates available. That's a much more recent database right there. So keep an eye on that when you go look. But if I go here and I go look for Jesse Dorton, I do find him. And you might be very familiar already with the Genealogy Bank Obituaries database. And the fact that often you'll either find an image of it in this data set, or you'll find a nice transcription like what you're seeing. Now it's an AI transcription or an OCR transcription, I guess, over here on the left. And so it's not perfect, but it's certainly readable. And we've got the names extracted of several relatives. And in fact, there's so much information in this particular obituary that I am able to confidently identify him as a relative because it mentions other relatives that I already know about. And I learned so much that I'm able to build the family tree out, not just to his parents, but look how many people I put on his family tree just from that obituary. All right, I think I've got time for one more, and I can't resist it being for one for a nun because I'm working on a big project right now about nuns in the United States. And this is a 2-for-1. There's 2 obituaries involved in this really quick story. And the first is I'm looking for the family of Henry Fox. His memorial at Find a Grave tells me what cemetery he was buried in. And because I don't have permission to share the images here that were contributed to Find a Grave, that's why they're blanked out. So I go and I found Roselawn Cemetery. So I follow this to the cemetery website. The cemetery actually has its own little index of burials, and it's got this strange notation at the end that says George F. McCarthy. Well, who's George F. McCarthy? So I reach out to Roselawn Funeral Home and I ask them, who is George F. McCarthy? And they tell me that this is the name of the funeral home that handled his funeral back in 1961. And it's not named that anymore, but they gave me the new name and the phone number. So I contacted the funeral home. So this is a multi-step process. I contacted the funeral home. I did find a record, and boy, they had their records on microfiche. What a funeral home. They got their act together. So within a week or so, they've mailed me the entire file that includes the death certificate and includes the obituary plus several announcements of the funeral mass that was the masses that were held. So I've got all kinds of information. Now, what really catches my interest, because I don't know anything about the family of Henry Fox, really, other than the names of his parents, and I've learned those parents, but I don't know anything about siblings or anybody else. I find that he is the brother of Sister Mary Bertilla of Waterloo, Iowa. Now, because I know they're Catholic from the church reference, I know this is a religious name. So Sister Mary Bertilla was not her name at birth. I don't know who she is, other than that she's a sister, probably a half sister, since his parents divorced when he was 8 years old. So I'm wondering whatever happened. And I look for her. And when I finally find her, I find her obituary, I find her personnel file from her religious order. And with all of the information that I can collect from her, I'm able to extend Henry's family tree to his step family over here, to his mother's second marriage, and to not just one half sister, but 3 half sisters. And then the descendants of Mary and Rosa as well. They did not become nuns, they had families. So I was able to really extend that family tree pretty far. All right, we're right at 9:14. Do I have one more time for one more example, Joe, or should I wrap it up? Yeah? All right. I'll tell you the story of the Invisible Woman then. So this is Huldah Selby, and all I know about her is that her husband ran off to the gold rush in 1849, and when he showed up several years later on the doorstep, she met him with a shotgun because she didn't recognize him. And he announced to her that he'd bought land and they were moving west, and he should have waited until she didn't have the shotgun in her hand anymore. I'm sure she was pretty unhappy about that. But because of this story that I know about her, I'm really interested in learning more about her. I know that she died in 1896. She's someone I'd like to know more about. Here's how I found her obituary. If you're familiar with the Periodical Source Index, it's an index to millions of articles in thousands of publications for genealogy and local history societies, journals, newsletters, all kinds of, from the various simplest stapled newsletters to uh, the most advanced journals. So what I'm doing is a location search here really quick, and I'm going to go look for her. Her place of death was in Camden County, Missouri. So I'm looking for her here. And I'm wondering if somebody ever transcribed any sort of obituary index in Camden County. And this is just the kind of thing that you wonder. So I have lots of subjects here I could look under. I could look under vital records. And when I do find this, look at this transcription, deaths from Lynn Creek newspapers up to 1896, which is the year that she died. And it says SEL for selected. So I have a chance. So what I'm going to do is order a copy of this article from the Missouri State Genealogical Association Journal. This Percy, the index itself, is hosted by the Allen County Public Library. It's free to search this, and then I can click there to order a copy of this article, which is very inexpensive. It's a public library, so they have a very inexpensive article fulfillment service. And they did send me a copy of the Deaths from Lynn Creek newspapers, and it included not just a line item with an index for it, but it included a transcript of the entire obituary that told me all kinds of things about her, with lots of dates and relatives' names and a lengthy description of her life and church service in the Methodist Episcopal Church for more than 30 years. And in fact, it even describes her suffering in the face of death and those who were left behind. All right, I'm gonna click through those ones, and I just want to remember, I want to leave you with two things to remember really quick. And the first is to remember that an obituary is a particular kind of record. It's a commemoration and a life chronicle. There's two different pieces of it, of kinds of information here, like I talked about at the beginning. And one is a little more subjective than the other, isn't it? So you want to keep that in mind, because that obituary reflects what society values and wants to remember about that person's history. So it's not an all-inclusive everything, warts and all. It's serving a very specific purpose at the end of their lives. And remember that when you're taking a look at it. And I could take questions now or at the end, whatever Joe tells
Yeah,
me
we
to
can do
do.
a few questions right now. Are there any questions for Sunny? If you want, just raise your hand. Sunny, do you have any advice on what kind of things we can put on the family tree when we're working with an obituary, in terms of like what
As, as
kind
far
of
as
what's
copyright,
your big, yeah.
okay, as far as copyright, so that does get really tricky.
Okay.
And a couple of copyright things to consider in the United States here, where copyright protections often apply within the last 95 years or so. So we should sort of assume, even though that's not always the case, but it's safe to assume that if it's less than 95 years old, that copyright protections are going to apply. In addition, if you get a digital image of that, of that obituary from a commercial website, like a newspapers.com or a genealogy bank itself, their images of it themselves, separate from the newspaper, are also licensed. And boy, Genealogy Bank does not want you to take that picture of that obituary and then go over and put it like on ancestry.com. That's their competitor.
Yeah.
Now, if it's newspapers.com to Ancestry, they're okay with that. And in fact, they facilitate it for you. They say attach it to your family tree
Okay.
because they're the same company, right? So you want to keep those two things both in mind. Am I violating the copyright protections in the last 95 years? And am I violating that image copyright if I'm getting it from? So it may be that if you found it online at newspapers.com, but it's more than 95 years old, then you write it out. And instead
Okay.
of sharing the image copy, you share your own
share the
transcript.
transcription. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's
So
great.
so just ask those questions to yourself.
Okay, cool. That's great. Any other questions for Sunny? Just raise your hand if you do. If not, we'll have some more time right at the end. Okay. Okay, well, so hang on to your questions. So Carla, why don't you go ahead, and so maybe Sunny, you can stop share, and then Carla.
Yep.
But yeah, you feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat at any moment, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end.
Okay, can you see?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, and I apologize, my camera is not working and I don't know why. Anyway, I'm going to talk about my internship. My name is Carla Laney and I live in Alpine, Utah. I am actually a descendant of one of the first 5 families to settle Alpine. So we've been here for a very, very long time. I am a student at Brigham Young University and my major is professional studies. And this is my family search community tree building internship project. I did this last spring of 2024. And the title of my project is The Banns and Marriages of Liverpool, Lancashire, England for the year 1800. While I was waiting to begin this internship, both of my parents, who were in their mid-80s, suffered falls. And suddenly they needed 24/7 care. So here I was starting a new semester, an internship, and I was spending 8 to 10 hours a day taking care of my parents. So I was about ready to just drop out of everything. And I spoke with the project manager at the internship and explained my situation. And she said, you know what? You just need to move forward with faith. Something will work out. And so I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And so at that point, I decided to pivot with my internship. I had this massively intricate internship planned, and I thought, you know what? That's probably not going to work. But how about I find something that is going to help nourish my soul at a time when I really need it? So I decided that's what I'm going to do. And the purpose of this internship is to add to the global family tree. By adding sources, attaching memories, and creating new people. We would also working with volunteers to teach them how to do that, how to use SourceLinker, and how to add people to the global family tree. And by doing this, the volunteers learn a new skill that will help them in their own family history work, and it will encourage temple work. So I decided that that was what I was going to do, but I needed to find a data set that I could work with. So I went to my ancestors who are from the Lancashire area of England, and I started searching for data sets that might work. And I found the banns and marriages of Liverpool, Lancashire, England, 1557 to 1960. This is a massive data set. It's over 400,000 images of nothing but marriage records for couples in that area. Well, I wasn't going to be able to do 400,000 records, so I narrowed it down to just 1,800, the year 1800, and that encompassed 32,000 records. I thought, well, that's a good starting point for this project. So my ancestors actually came from Burnley, which is just outside of Liverpool. And I thought, you know what, I'm probably going to stumble across family members as I do this work. And that was exciting to me. Another ulterior motive in choosing this data set was my husband's family comes from Whalley, which is 10 miles in the other direction. So both of our families come from this same area. And I thought I could probably get my husband interested in this, and we're going to pave the ground for a future family history mission. Okay, now had my data set, was ready to go, but I needed volunteers. Unfortunately, I was either spending every minute doing homework or I was at my parents' house. I really didn't have a way to recruit a lot of volunteers, so I turned to my family. My sister Amy was the first to volunteer, and I set her up on my dad's computer using his church account. She is not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but she was so excited to work with this project and to connect families. And her favorite part was reading the marriage records, because the marriage records always contain the occupation of the groom. And she got a kick out of these occupations: cordwainer, victualler, cooper, gentleman's valet. And she called me and she says, oh my gosh, there's a guy here. It says he's a pilot. How could he be a pilot in 1800 in England? And so I said, well, he was probably a ship's pilot. And those are the guys who guide the ships into an unfamiliar port. Turns out that's exactly what he was. My brother David also volunteered, and because he has his own church account, he could work on the project anywhere. And he is a mobile chiropractor. So he did a lot of the project working on his iPad in his car in between appointments. And he absolutely loved working with the SourceLinker. He was excited about that. And my husband, Gary, was my last volunteer. And his favorite part of the project was reading about the little villages that these brides and grooms came from. And he said, we have got to go there. We've got to go visit Walton on the Hill and Upper Tootle and Whole Bottom Crompton and all these amazing British villages. So that was fun for him. The first thing we did in getting this going was I created a spreadsheet so we could keep the project organized, keep track of what had been done. Each each page had 20 records on it. And as we completed a page, we marked it off and marked completed. If there were any problems at all, my volunteers or I would make a notation on the spreadsheet. Then I could go back in and double check and see what the issue was and correct it if possible. I trained them how to use SourceLinker and spent quite a bit of time just making sure they were all comfortable using SourceLinker and working their way through it, and encouraging them to ask questions. And then I turned them loose, and it was great. The first issue we ran into was there was not a single record in this entire data set that had a standardized location. So standardizing locations is critical because it allows for consistent identification, and you can track places over time even if boundaries change. So it's very important to have standardized locations. Well, luckily, Family Search had a standardized location in their database for Liverpool, Lancashire, England. Note the year 1207 to 1801, that was absolutely perfect for our data set because we were working with all records from the year 1800. So each record that we added now has a standardized location of Liverpool, Lancashire, England for that time frame. And I know that the descendants of these people are going to be really grateful that the volunteers went to the effort to do this, because it's going to make it so much easier for them to find records when they look. Another issue that we ran into, and this is you know, everyone who uses SourceLinker runs into this, where the names are different. And my volunteers would make a notation on the spreadsheet, then I would go back in and double check. This allowed me to kind of brush off my paleography skills and open up original records, compare names, compare signatures, look things up, and then make edits to the record and update them so that these sources could then be linked. One fun thing we found is that many of these marriages were taking place at a church called Our Lady and St. Nicholas Church in Liverpool. There were so many marriages there that I looked it up, and look at that picture. This is a modern day picture with the modern buildings in the background, but this church is still there. It's been there since 1200. And it just is amazing that they have been performing, you know, ceremonies there, marriage ceremonies, baptisms, christenings for over 800 years. I was just amazed by that, thought that was wonderful. My volunteers were absolutely fantastic, and they had a great experience. My sister said her favorite experience was she had just connected a couple, a bride and groom, and it was in June of 1800. And as the SourceLinker turned green to show that they had been linked, then 4 other names appeared on the bottom of the screen. And she said, wait, who are these people? Then she said, oh my goodness, that's their children. Did I just connect a family? She was so overwhelmed to think that she'd provided a way for these descendants of this family to find their ancestors and see when and where they were married. Gary said that sometimes I feel discouraged when I can't attend the temple regularly, but working on this project helped me realize the many additional ways to aid in the gathering of Zion, and I can do it from anywhere. My brother David, this was the most cherished experience we had. David had a really rough year last year. He is self-employed. He is the father of 9 children. 2 of his sons died within a week of each other in separate, unrelated accidents. He also has 2 special needs children. So he is overwhelmed. He was feeling absolutely overwhelmed. And he said that this project came at a time when he desperately needed to find a way to feel connected to God. And he said, I feel peace knowing that even in the chaos of my life, I can fulfill one aspect of my patriarchal blessing to aid in the gathering of Zion. We started with 32,000 sources, and we were able to add 12,256 sources and 1,500 people. So we made a pretty good dent in that data set. Now, Joe asked me, maybe I could share something. What would I do differently if I were approaching an internship now? Well, first thing, I would recruit more volunteers. I'm in a different position now. You'll be happy to hear my parents are both doing fantastic. They no longer need the 24/7 care. I have more time on my hands, so I would recruit more volunteers. This would be a great project to introduce at like a family history fair to get more people involved. I would probably recruit people who were a little more experienced with Source Linker and could do some of the advanced source linking. And I would also make a training video that my volunteers could refer back to, rather than having to call me all the time or send me texts or whatever. They could just maybe refer back to the training video. But that's probably what I would do differently. And this was a fantastic experience. I would highly recommend it. It was a great way to, and a simple way to feel like I was really contributing and making a difference. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thanks. Thanks, Carla. That was fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for Carla? You can go ahead and raise your hand, or you can even just unmute. And well, Carla, I have a question. So tell me more about the training video. What made you think that that would be an important part of the project?
Well, I was getting texts at all hours of the day and night from my sister and my brother asking me how to do different things. And there were some training videos that we had been given. And I kept losing them and not being able to find them. And I thought, I just need to make my own training video. And I thought it would be great to even sit down and create a video with whoever I was training at the time, so they would feel a part of it and could look back at that. But that was just something that I thought I might want to do.
Any other questions for Carla? Yeah, go ahead, Donna.
Hi. Those both were really cool presentations. I had to step out for a second and I missed how you got access to that record set in England.
I just went through Family Search and started looking for record sets in the area where I knew I had ancestors. And I found this record set. It was the Marriages and Banns, and I realized it was going to be a fairly simple record set to work with because it was just brides and grooms. And I thought that, and I needed something simple for what we were going through in our family at the time. I needed something simple. So I just found it on Family Search.
Oh, okay. And not indexed, obviously, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's indexed. And but you need to go in and check the original records, double check, compare, verify.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll do the third presentation, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but also feel free to, drop any questions in the chat. So let me share my screen. Always embarrassed if I can't pull this part off, but do my best. Okay, so the reason I wanted to do this topic is I've been thinking a lot about just how to help people get started on a community project. I've had lots of groups reach out and say, what could we do in the city in Colorado, or what could we do in the city in California? So I just wanted to talk about 3 tools that I think you could get a project started anywhere. And when I think about a community, I often think of a geographic community, but you could think of a community as a group of people who all worked at the same place, or a group of people who all went to the same school, or maybe a group of people who are in the same Boy Scout troop. Like any one of those could be a community. And the thing I love about doing a community project is you sometimes see unexpected connections between different people. Like one thing I really loved about Sunny's presentation, because she's doing the work about nuns, is that like connection that you made between a nun and her kind of sibling. And I love those graphs, how you're able to kind of use the obits to kind of show the whole sibling structure, which, like our families are communities, but sometimes our families start to interconnect within a community. And actually in some communities, like almost everyone's related just because of the way, families marry different families, and, it kind of all starts to connect. So I'm going to just show you 3 tools. Now, one of these tools, these tools always work better on a computer, but I've always tried to build tools that you could also do on a phone, because I feel like sometimes with like a family history project, we want to have perfect conditions, like a computer lab or a family search center, which is awesome. That's always the ideal. But I also wanted to highlight you can do some of these projects anywhere, anytime. And so this was a family reunion where we were doing a community project together for actually where Pat's from. So this was for Everett, Washington, which kind of later became our Skagit County project. So all these tools are going to build on SourceLinker. So SourceLinker is just the way on Family Search that we attach a source to the family tree, but I wanted to highlight this particular source. Now, obviously, I'd hit the details button so I could see, you know, where people were born. But this Daisy Young is the same as this Daisy Hughes. This Will Young is the same as this Will Young. And so actually, Ray and Flora were children that just weren't on the tree. So as other people have mentioned, that it's really neat to reunite a family. And so that's SourceLinker makes that possible. And then if you're new to SourceLinker, Cameron Briggs has this amazing website called sourcelinker101.com. His videos are very short, very really clear. So if you're trying to help people that want to get more familiar with SourceLinker, I would definitely use his website. And I love how he set it up into like beginner, intermediate, advanced, things you can do on your phone. He just has a real gift for like breaking it into smaller pieces. And I feel like every time I go through his videos, I feel like I'm just a little bit better at doing source linking. So the first tool I wanted to share with you, and this is the tool, anytime anyone reaches out to do a geographic community, I always say, go to Goldie May first. It's a super powerful tool. Now, this is one that only works on a computer, but it's a Chrome extension. It takes like 2 seconds to install. And then when you get on Goldie May, there's the 3 bars. You'll click that and hit volunteering. And then notice down here at the bottom, you can put in a place or a surname, and you can also focus on a record collection like 1920 census or Numident. I've really loved the place search because I can do a specific city, and then it'll tell me right away how many hints are left. So when I'm working with the group, it's just really neat to say, like you can see here, trend, and the other thing, you do get trending. So sometimes if you get enough people kind of working on it, you might hit the trending list. But you can see here's Yamhill County in Oregon, there's 303 left. And so a lot of times actually, so if you want help with your project, I would get on the trending group, the trending list, because sometimes I'll just jump on or other people just jump on the trending and kind of help out, you know, finish a project. The other thing I really love about Goldie May is it will automatically tell you how you're related to the person. And so depending on what community you pick, you might actually find yourself with lots of cousins, especially if you pick a surname in a place where your family are from. And then it'll also flag if there's a possible duplicate, which is in a more advanced skill, but sometimes that can be a great thing to do. So my advice, when you want to do a community project, I would just start with Goldie May and do all those first. Then what you can do is do the Map app. This is a tool we built at the Record Linking Lab, and you can search by surname or location, or you can pick one of our projects. And if you want to get one of your projects kind of highlighted in here, we could talk about that. Or if you find that when you click on location and type in a place, there aren't hints, we can also do a better job at reloading those. So I always encourage people to start on Goldie May and exhaust the whole set of hints on Goldie May, and then come here and we can help you kind of add more to this. But the other thing I like about it, in this one, it's kind of a visual. Each of these dots is a record hint. If you click on the dot and then click on the little box, it takes you right into SourceLinker. And this can be really fun for a group to see all the dots disappear as you work on them. And then these are just some of the projects that we have loaded in there. So lots of you know, countries, also African American. I created this easy one, so if you're working with kind of a really beginner set, you can just give them some really easy hints. Okay, and then the third tool, I forgot to renumber this, is reverse hints. Now reverse hints will always work. So basically, the reason we call these reverse hints is over here on the left. This is a profile on the tree, and this is a record hint. A reverse hint, so in this case, you start with the profile and it points you to a record. A reverse hint is where you're looking at the record and it points you back to the tree. So this icon that I've kind of this Pearl Price that I've marked with a red box, if you see that little head icon on there, that means she has a hint. So if you click on that head icon, it will take you to SourceLinker. The reason I really like reverse hints is because you can search any record collection, any surname, you can put in a place, you can put in a birth range, you can put in a death range. And so this can be a really great way to kind of figure out, you know, how many people are in the record that meet your criteria and how many of them are on the tree already. And so you just pick a place to start. A lot of my family's from Bedford County, Virginia. Here you see I'm getting a lot of hints. So then I type in Price, and here, right here is Mr. H.K. Price has a hint. And so I can actually click on that hint and go and do it. Now, sometimes if you want to narrow your search, you can use these little radio boxes on the right, and that'll make it an exact search. And then this is just highlighting that, like that blue circle, that one means it's already attached. And the little head icons means that there's hints. Okay, and then you can access all these tools in one place. So you just go to rll.byu.edu and then hit the volunteer tab. And you can do right here is you see the Goldie May, you can see the GeoHints. And then for reverse hints, if you want to, I have a full video about it. If you go to YouTube and just type reverse hints Joe Price, you can see the video. And then I just wanted to show kind of like different groups you can work with. So for anyone that volunteers at a family search center or at a library or at a museum, this can be a really great way to involve beginners in family history, especially if they want to try out their own surname or try out the community they're part of. So this would be like the typical size group I'd work with. In this case, every kid would have their own computer in our family search center. Sometimes I do much larger groups. So this group up above, that was about 600 people. And this group down below was about 200 people. So then you have to start thinking about, you know, maybe trying some of these things on a phone, or maybe having some people in the computer lab while others are on a phone, kind of thinking about how to mix and match those things. And then I just wanted to highlight one project that's been pretty meaningful to me. This is probably one of the community projects I've most enjoyed doing. This is Denton, Texas. So we have kind of a personal connection with Denton, Texas. So every year we do a project with them. And so what you see up here on the top is this is a group of individuals down in Denton, Texas. And then this group down here, this is a group in Springville. And so we plan our activities so that they're both happening at the same time. And so I think this is for those of you that live in Utah. Sometimes our community projects are harder because, you know, like Springville, Utah is like, if you go into a record, they're almost all on the tree. So it's really neat to kind of have almost like an adopt, you know, like a sister school that you work with. And actually, it's kind of a neat, you know, like when I was a kid, a teenager, I had a pen pal. This is kind of like the analog of a pen pal. So I'd almost love to see something like this, but that crosses the pond. So maybe we have a group over in Liverpool and a group in Alpine, and maybe they're working together. So Carla, that might be a thought for like where you get your volunteers from. So last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a live demo of some of these tools. And so, I was impressed. I saw Sunny do a live demo. So that's always, you're always a little nervous about how these things will play out, but let's try this. So if you go to Record Linking Labs, so if you just type rll.byu.edu, and then you can just hit volunteer, then these are all the different tools. So right here is Goldie May. And so right here, you just go to their website and you just hit install now. And then it just basically, so I've already have it on Chrome. If you don't have it, it would just say add to Chrome. And then it'll just show up here in that little puzzle piece. And if you hit Goldie May, it just opens over here off to the right. And so there, so I'm just going to sign in. And let me just show you the one key thing is right here. If you scroll down, you're going to be looking for volunteering. And so then I could just type in a place. I'm going to type in my surname. So here's Price, and you just hit start. And so notice it just pulled up a SourceLinker window over here. And so here's a big family. You can hit show details. So you can kind of look inside. So you can see that this is a family where I have lots of names lining up really well. I've got Annie, born in Louisiana. I've got Ruth, born in Louisiana. Marjorie, born in Louisiana. Luis, born in Louisiana. So this looks like a really good family. All the ages are matching up really well. And so then on Goldie May, I just hit attach records. And then you'll see that Goldie May will just do all the clicking for you. And if you're related, it'll pop up a little window that says you're related. This is your fourth cousin or fifth cousin. And then you can just hit next and it'll pull up the next one. And then I love that it kind of keeps track of like how much you've done. So you can see here that one of these people has some possible duplicates. But again, I can look inside here. I can see Polk County. And so all the names are lining up really well. And so I would hit attach records. But this is kind of how Goldie May works. Let me just show you the reverse hints, because I think the map app's pretty easy to use. So let me just show you the reverse hints. So you just go on Family Search, you hit search records. And since Pat is here, I'm going to just go Skagit, Washington. And I'm going to see if there's any prices up there in Skagit, Washington. So I'll hit search. And so you can see right here, here are some people in the Social Security Death Index. And the key thing we're looking for is, if you guys can see this little head icon or this head icon, if I click on that, and I usually just hit open in a new window, then here I am in SourceLinker. And so you can see here that actually all this information was already there. So I can attach that. And then when I come back and I refresh, then Allie Price will have had her, her icon will have changed. So if I pull this over here, you can see, where did our Allie Price go? So I lost her. Oh, there she is right there. So you can see her icon changed. It's kind of a cool way to kind of see, you know, kind of be able to keep track of who's on the tree. And then notice like Betty L. Price, she doesn't have either. My guess is she's probably on the tree, but Family Search isn't picking her up because this is probably her married name. But this is like one of the things I really love doing is kind of trying to achieve full coverage for one particular group. Okay, so with that, I'll stop my share, and we basically now just have some questions for so basically you can ask questions to any one of the three of us. Just raise your hand and we'll take questions here for several minutes. Oh, so question, how would you differentiate between using these programs versus something like Quick Name Review for a large group activity? Yeah, so Quick Name Review is a great activity for those of you that have used Get Involved on Family Search, Quick Name Review is a great activity. I really think that we had this really amazing long period of time where indexing was so important. And I think it's still important. But I actually think attaching sources to the tree and adding new people is kind of the new form of indexing. So if you think about all those years that we used indexing as a form of service, it's given us a massive amount of records. And I think now that we are at that point where we can now do tree growth like we've never thought possible. And so when I work with a youth group, even in 10 minutes, it's not uncommon for them all to add at least one person to the tree or two people to the tree. And that can be a very rewarding thing. Whereas when they ask me, what's the result of name review? I say, well, we're creating more indexed records. And they're like, well, and then what? And you know, it just feels like a couple more steps down the road. Whereas when they put someone new on the tree or reunite a family, I love the thing that Carla said about reuniting a family, or when you saw Sunny like connecting together siblings. To me, I think that's like the most happy aspect of family history. Yeah. And then Carla said 5 a day is a great way to get started. So yeah, if you go to the volunteer page, you can.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, so go ahead and raise your hand if you have any question. And this can be for any one of us, for Sunny or Carla.
I actually have a question for you, Joe.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Posted it here. So I went on Goldie May and tried to reproduce what you're doing with the volunteering.
Yeah.
And I chose a place, and it's
Okay.
telling me that there are thousands of records remaining, but then when I click start, nothing happens.
That's interesting. Let me think about what could pop. Oh, okay. I bet it's because it's going to be your Chrome browser. If you look on your Chrome browser window, you might have multiple tabs open.
It just opens up a new tab.
Yeah, it opens up a new tab, or if you already have a Family Search tab open, you might need to go to that tab. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just have only one tab open, because then I know exactly where it's going to point. So it's probably pointing to one of your Chrome tabs.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd maybe try that out. But it probably did something. It's just probably, if you're like me, you probably have a lot of tabs open, and it's probably on one of them.
Yeah, I was doing the same. It took me a second to find it. I was like, wait, where is it
Yeah,
at?
so Tanea, did you try that as well?
The
and
same thing
popped up?
happened. I was like, wait, where is it? And then I found it eventually.
Oh, you know what? I think it wouldn't let me because it was giving me a like a little bar across the top saying 20% off Roots Tech special.
Okay.
So it
Okay,
had one of those
sorry
little
about
pop-ups that I didn't notice it. So once I erase that, then I'm seeing some things.
Well, so Sunny, tell us a little bit about like what's been your experience? Do most places have good obituaries? Like, or is there any way to predict ahead of time when you're looking for someone that you're likely to find obituaries? I know you gave us kind of the time period.
Yeah. So I think that if I had that question, is there likely to be an obituary for this person? I would go to the Directory of American Newspapers on the Library of Congress website, which has recently been separated from Chronicling America. It was part of it for a long time, but with the new website launching, it's now a separate part. But if you just look for Directory of U.S. Like a U.S. newspaper, something like that, I forget what it's called, Directory of American Newspapers or something like that on Library of Congress website. That is the most comprehensive directory of all known newspapers ever published in the United States. So what I would do is go to your little tiny town or big town, whatever it is, go to your place and see what newspaper coverage it's giving you for the time period you're looking for. and then click through to see what holdings of those are available, because it may just be like, oh yeah, sorry, there are only like 5 issues of that paper spanning, you know, available from a 10-year time period. So there's just not really, even if there was something, there's not much left. So, but on other times you'll be like, oh, there were 4 or 5 different papers in this locale at that time period, or maybe there was nothing there in this little tiny town, but the next town over appears to have covered that town, so that then you kind of go to the look geographically at the next town, I guess, and look to see if there was good coverage there. So that would be the first place I would go to answer a coverage question.
That's cool. And Sunny, Donna kind of had a question that probably touches on both of us. Are foreign language records available? Have you had some experience with obituaries and other
For
countries?
obituaries in other languages, I
Yeah.
have not so much. And the place
Okay.
that I would go to explore those is oldnews.com, which was launched by MyHeritage not too long ago. And from what I have seen, they're the leaders so far in really curating non-English language outside the United States newspaper content. I know that there's different sites, different places that specialize in maybe one place or language, but that is oldnews.com would be one place. So if you have the right subscription, or if you want to try a trial subscription for that, then that's where I would look.
Yeah. And then Donna, on the reverse hints, what I like to do when I'm helping someone, I go to search records, and then there's a little country field, and I'll just type in the country, and then that will let me see what records are indexed, and that will help me kind of figure out, you know, if they're likely to find good stuff. And then you can search within a collection.
Oh, cool.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, so Christy said, this made me realize I've never looked to see if there are any sources for obituaries in Mexico. That's pretty interesting to kind of think about. Like, I think the question I always ask when I'm in another country is, how do people know someone died? It's so, because it was kind of like, Sunny, you had actually that kind of funny.
Yeah, that question does come up. So the other thing I was going to tell you about newspaper coverage that I just had to flip through those slides real quick because I ran out of time, is we have our free newspaper websites here in the United States. We have Chronicling America and Fulton History. And both of those are fantastic. Fulton History is one guy's project, but it's actually got double the content of Chronicling America. So
Wow.
it's mostly New York, but it's double the content. The thing to remember about the free newspaper portals is that they're going to specialize in content that is no longer copyright restricted, meaning most, not exclusively, but most of their stuff is going to be more than 95 years old. So if you're looking for an obituary within the last 95 years, don't start your search at Chronicling America or Fulton, even though it's free. I mean, you can, but you know, don't get discouraged if you don't find it, because you're not likely to find it there. That's why the commercial partner, like the commercial websites, newspapers, Genealogy Bank, Newspaper Archive, which is now part of Story.com. That's why they charge for it, is because they get charged licensing fees because it's still under copyright. But that's where you're going to find everything for the last 95 years.
And Miles, thanks for your comment. You mentioned the Family Search AI Research Assistant also gives you ways. So I'm excited to try that out. So,
Joe, I
any
had a
final-
question.
Yeah, sure.
If I take my bands and marriages data set and
Mhm.
open it in Goldie May,
Mhm.
I can do it through Goldie May,
Yeah,
right?
you can attach it through Goldie May. You
That
won't
would
be able
make it go so much faster.
Absolutely. Like,
Oh.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I should have mentioned Goldie May is just like, I always have it open. Like, or I mean, it's just always there with me because, and here's the bad thing, like if you get used to using Goldie May, it'll become painful to attach sources by hand. So
That's what I'm afraid of. But thank you. Thank you. That is
Yeah,
like
for sure.
I've just had my whole world blown open just now. Thank you.
Yeah. Which is also, Carla, for your project, the nice thing is if you have Goldie May open, it'll also do the relative checking for you.
Oh, fantastic.
And
Thank
so,
you. That's
So
great.
that's kind of a neat, like, personal thing. Okay, cool. Well, I just want to thank everyone for participating tonight. Sunny, it was great to have you with us for the Bridge Forum, and Carla, I'm so grateful that you got to present about your Family Search internship, and I was grateful also to share a few things with this group. I've always really enjoyed working with this group, and so this was a great evening. And with that, I think we'll close. I'll stop the video. But if anyone wants to stay on it a little bit longer, you're welcome to.